What's up, good people? It's Bedtime Stories, Grownup edition. Like mother, like daughter, episode 11. Now, by now, y'all should know that if I'm not working, I'm sleeping. And if I'm not sleeping, I'm working. So I'm on my way to work again. And if I don't get this recording in now, it won't get done. When we left off, Jessica was texting and driving, and she got ran off the road. Marcus thought he had outsmarted Angela by mailing the paperwork for the business dissolution to the petitioner address that was on the separation paperwork, and then following the recipient to wherever he was going to take those papers, and all he did was end up at the law firm. Unfortunately, Jessica was following him. That created a whole storm around the law firm. Around 5 p.m., a woman walks into the assisted living facility. She walks to the area where the volunteers check in. She gets her checklist, a cart with her snacks, books, toys, other items to entertain the residents with. She goes from room to room and does her usual volunteer tasks, handing out snacks and books and other items. She pushes the cart into one of the storage rooms and slides into Miss Cheryl's room. Miss Cheryl's taking a nap. The lights are out. Both Delani and Wesley are in position outside of Marcus and Jessica's firm, waiting for them to leave out at some point. And at about 5:30, Marcus leaves the job, heading home, and he decides at the last minute that he's going to go by a local bar and have himself a couple of drinks, because it's all starting to hit him at once that he lost his wife, and if she signs the paperwork to dissolve the business, he's going to actually lose the last thing that he has to keep him attached to his wife. Marcus enters the bar, and all of the regulars are already there. He walks over to the bar, takes a seat, orders a rum and coke. One of the OGs comes and sits down next to him. He says, "Marcus? Little Marcus, is that you?" Marcus says, "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" He says, "It's me, Stanley. Your father, Cliff, was one of my best friends." Marcus says, "Oh my goodness, Mr. Stanley, how are you?" Stanley says, No, son, it's just Stanley. You a grown man now. I'm good. How you doing?" Marcus says, "Well, I can't complain." Mr. Stanley says, "And if you did, nobody would care." Marcus laughs and says, "My mother says that all the time." Mr. Stanley says, "How is your mother doing? Is that Brenda still nosy? I tell you what, she used to be in everybody's business. And the business that she didn't hear from people, think she had Jesus on the main line. And he was always telling her somebody's business." Marcus chuckles and says, "Show you right, Stanley. She's doing well." Stanley says, "That's good to hear. Now, son, tell me why you in a bar on a weeknight. I thought y'all youngsters usually go to happy hour. This ain't happy hour, son. This is sad hour." Marcus says, "Well, I've been going through some things over the past few months." Stanley says, "I can tell by looking at you. What's her name?" Marcus says, "Why would you assume it's about a woman, Stanley?" Stanley says, "Boy, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Truth be told, you look like you've been stuck between two bookends, and the bookends got coochies." Marcus about chokes on his rum and coke. He says, "Stanley." Stanley says, "Go on. I ain't gonna tell nobody. This bar here is like Vegas. What goes on here stays here. Go on and unload. Your father's not here. Let me give you some good fatherly advice, son." Marcus starts feeling the rum and coke. He decides he might as well get some wisdom from an OG he'd been hearing from all of the women. He doesn't tell Mr. Stanley all his business, but he tells him enough to go on. Mr. Stanley says, "And there lies the problem, son. You're just like your daddy. Neither one of y'all Negroes know how to wear a rubber." Marcus is flabbergasted. Mr. Stanley continues, "Men got a right to do what men do. But when you do what men do, the worst thing you can do is make a baby or bring home an STD." The OG on the left of him says, "Or you could just be faithful." Stanley says, "Or pigs can fly." There's two rules to dealing with women. Rule number 1, you get you a good submissive woman. And rule number 2, you make sure none of the women find out about each other. Roscoe says, now Stanley, I'm not going to sit here and let you steer Cliff's baby boy in the wrong direction. Don't listen to him, son. A good man takes care of his woman. And part of taking care of your woman is remaining faithful and being loyal. If you can't do those 2 things, then you let that woman go and find her a man who can. Stanley says, ain't no men who can. That's why we do what we do and we wear rubbers. Roscoe says, I was married to my Marge for 52 years. And if the cancer didn't take her, I'd still be married to her happily now. Stanley says, and there goes the pig that flew. Marcus says, a smart woman told me recently that if we spend less time trying to teach women how to be submissive and more time teaching men how to lead, we'd all be better for it. Roscoe says, now that's not just a smart woman, that's a wise woman. Wesley is following Marcus and Delaney is in position waiting for Jessica to leave the engineering firm. Even though it's after 5:30, Delaney is not surprised because she's noticed that most of the chiefs work late, well after all of the other employees have left for the day. At the same time, Lauren is texting LJ. She's a little concerned about Jessica. She texted her, she called her just to check in and make sure she's good, and she's gotten no response. And we got the screenshots. All of a sudden, Miss Cheryl feels a hand covering her mouth and her nose. She opens her eyes and jerks her body, and then the lamp on the side of her bed turns on, and the person standing in front of her pulls off a wig and some glasses. She looks up and she realizes she recognizes her. Jessica says, surprise, remember me? Jessica holds up a hypodermic needle and tells Miss Cheryl that she's going to take her hand off her mouth. But if she screams, it's lights out. Jessica removes her hand from Miss Cheryl's mouth as she says, I just want to know one thing, old lady. Where is she? Miss Cheryl pretends like her dementia is worse than it is. And she says, baby, who are you? And who are you looking for? Jessica says, don't play with me. I know you still with it. And I know that you know who I am. Now, I'm only going to ask you one more time as she puts the hypodermic needle to Miss Cheryl's arm. Where the is she? Miss Cheryl looks Jessica square in the eye and says, whatever you going to do, you might as well do, because I'm not telling you a damn thing. Jessica says, oh yeah? As she slides the hypodermic needle into Miss Cheryl's vein. She says, okay. Well, old lady, this is for my mother. Miss Cheryl says, like mother, like daughter. I told Marcus she wasn't no good. What did you tell him? Miss Cheryl says, oh, I told him everything. I told him all about your mother. I told him all about what your mother tried to do to stop your father from leaving her. That's what you wanted, right? You wanted him to leave us and come back to you and your girls. You just wanted him to abandon his children. Miss Cheryl says, what are you even talking about? He wasn't going to leave you. Jessica says, oh, yeah, right. You'll say anything to save your own life. Jessica starts slowly injecting the poison into Miss Cheryl's arm as she says, this is for my sister, too. At that moment, she hears Stephanie's laugh outside of Miss Cheryl's door. Jessica drops the needle and takes off running. Now, she was not able to completely depress the plunger in the hypodermic needle before she heard Stephanie coming through the door. Stephanie entered the room, and right behind her was Regina. When they got into the room, the only person they saw there was Miss Cheryl. Stephanie walked over to the bed, and she starts talking to her mom. Mom, are you asleep? How you feeling? Miss Cheryl points the arm that wasn't stuck by the needle and says, Angela. Stephanie says, Mom, Angela's fine. She's in Denver. You know that. Cheryl says, no. Jessica and then she passes out.